Good evening, and thank you for really sharing the imprint of your presence on this evening and in every moment of every day. Hopefully, we're becoming more aware of choosing how to do that intentionally. Do you remember those early days of lockdown when some of us really struggled to get some sort of new routine going in our homes? Especially, I imagine, I don't have children, but I imagine it was especially difficult in families with children, small children, older children, or children, because things were just so different. Some of us did somehow, by God's grace, create some form of new rhythm to our days, and others of us didn't. There wasn't a right or a wrong. Sometimes organized chaos is its own form of rhythm. All of these are fine. The very fact that we are able to listen to one another this evening, or I'm speaking, you're listening, and maybe even discussing it in your homes, means that we are surviving. Yes, the quality of the survival is perhaps compromised and stretched and overstretched in some cases. But by now, which is about the 4th month in lockdown, how many of us are beginning to find life rather monotonous? What's the difference then between what I mentioned earlier about a routine and monotony? Perhaps each of us have our own unique understandings of that, but I'd like to share with you my understanding. For me, a routine acts as something that gives a sense of direction and purpose. It also acts as a container, particularly in the midst of very insecure times. It's not about dictating what to do and how to do it every moment of the day, but it is giving a generalized sense of where to go and what the commitments are, and then of course we have the choice of how we're going to operate within that. Basically, it's a kind of routine that is balanced, that enhances energy levels and general performance. Monotony for me seems to consume energy. It depletes creativity and creates all sorts of mental and psychological fatigue. Routine and monotony, they don't mutually exclude each other on an automatic level, but they can be mutually exclusive, of course. Sometimes they even seem to be close companions. Perhaps now we can just pause for a moment. You might even want to switch off this video and think about this question. Where in your life, if you're honest with yourself, is some form of monotony creeping in? And given our global context, this really isn't surprising at all. So it's not about judging it, it's simply about being aware. Where is this monotony creeping in my own life? Apparently, long-term isolation, loneliness, and a monotonous lifestyle can have far-reaching effects on our brain, on our mental health. And if you think about it for a moment, this makes complete sense. God has made an entire universe with a profusion of variety. For example, even something as simple as a plane tree. No two plane trees are absolutely identical, nor for that matter are the leaves on just one plane tree exactly the same as one another. There are always slight differentiations, be it a basic shape or a slight slant or a size. Each leaf is distinctive. This seems to be the natural and healthy order of things, this form of variety. But like all things, balance is also part of the whole. Excessive variety can be distracting and destabilizing, just as excessive attachment to routine can be claustrophobic and deathly monotonous. We all know how deathly it is when someone speaks or reads in a monotone, no inflection, no variation of speed, no pausing. It's actually, over an extended period of time, becomes very difficult not to fall asleep. So you can imagine then, you can start unpacking for yourselves what a monotonous lifestyle does to us. And I'm beginning to wonder how much conflict has been subconsciously provoked just to alleviate some of the sameness of life at present in certain people's environment. And when we combine monotony with a need to maintain high levels of alertness, it causes considerable stress in us. Perhaps the most concerning, or one of the most concerning aspects of monotony is how it impacts negatively on our cognitive functioning and skills. It can make us quite sluggish and dull-witted. But it needn't stay like that. We have the capacity to keep stimulating our minds, growing our brains. There are the more obvious things, and then there are the things that are perhaps not quite as obvious as we would think. The obvious ones are keeping up with interesting hobbies, learning something new, going outside every day and looking around and noting where there are changes or what the differentiations are. Laughter is an amazing stimuli as well, as are playing board games, card games. But what about the less obvious things? So one of the things we can do is when we're chatting to somebody on the phone, when we're describing or telling about an event or something that's going on in our lives, try to be creative and fresh in our expression of language and be far more detailed in our observation of what it is that we're telling. Very good for the brain. Another thing is when we're going for a walk or a run, yes, we know about the thing of varying our routes to make things interesting and keep the cognitive functions alert. But what is also very, very helpful is to keep noticing our surroundings and see the new, the fresh. And of course, at this time of the year, we start just getting glimpses of the possibility of spring arising. When somebody's speaking to us, and this is another way of keeping just those brain synapses growing and stimulated, is when somebody is talking to you. And that can be over a phone or person to person. Use your mental abilities to imagine as vividly as possible whatever it is they're telling you about it, because it activates and it stimulates the brain. And on top of that, depending on what the content is, can actually stimulate our sense of compassion and empathy as well, which is a growth into a fuller humaneness. I mentioned earlier this invitation to keep learning and learning something new. What some of us perhaps aren't aware of is that there are some wonderful online courses that either cost very little or doesn't cost anything at all. And one of the platforms is something you can either call Coursera or Coursera, and it's spelled course and then R-A, one word. Coursera or Coursera, C-O-U-R-S-E-R-A. Go and have a look at it. There might be something there that tickles your fancy and prickles the brain cells. There is also an opportunity to do some cognitive training through brain exercises. And Posset Science has developed some of these exercises. Go and Google something called Blinkist, so Blinkist, Brain HQ, and go and have a look at something there. Rearrange some of the furniture. Naturally not ideal to do that if you've got somebody who struggles to see very well. We're talking about people whose sight is fine. Rearrange furniture, the look of a room, that's also stimulating. Change tablecloths, cushions, colours around you. Maybe even you have sufficient paintings to shift those around in your home. Befriend the monotony. It is not an enemy to be fought or something to deny. I don't know how you would befriend it, but for me, one of the ways that it works well is to see it rather as a blank canvas, an opportunity to exercise creative juices and to be intentional about acting upon it rather than just perpetuating that blank canvas. To see this as creativity at its best. It's not about nothingness, but about taking what is and using it in fresh and exciting ways. So welcome to this challenge. Welcome to this new friend called monotony, but is in fact an opportunity for us to engage in a muscular way. Fresh things that are just waiting to be discovered. Until we meet again, it's been a pleasure and a joy to engage in this thinking together. Good night and sleep well. Apparently, long-term isolation, loneliness, and getting there. Let me just stop.